Hello, how are you? My name is Stephen Amadi, who is otherwise known as Mr. Fancy, and I want to welcome Class 8s into this English program. Now, specifically, I want us to discuss a very important thing in English, a very important part in English, which is writing. So, English, this is specifically for standard 8s, but not limited to them, because since we are speaking about writing and this composition writing, this involves almost everybody, because writing, which is creativity, requires a grade 6 to be good at that, a standard 8, and as well as a form 4. So anyone tuned in those categories, please, I want to welcome you, because this is gonna be very important to all of us. English, specifically composition writing. Writing gives quite a number of pupils a very hard time. Many do not know what it involves, and yet when you get into your room, and for class 8 it's 40 minutes, when you get into your room ready to sit, you are given 40 minutes. And within these 40 minutes, you have to write your plot. The instruction is usually the same. Since KCP began, and even before that, the instruction has always been the same, and the instruction is below is the beginning of, not the beginning of a composition. They say below is the beginning of a story. And I want you to underline that word, story. Below is the beginning of a story. Complete it, making it as interesting as possible. Again, I want to underline as interesting as possible. What this instruction tells us is that composition writing is storytelling. Composition writing is storytelling. You tell a story, and it's not a story based on once upon a time there lived a monkey. I know we are fond of such stories. Once upon a time there lived a hare and a frog who are friends. So when we come to writing our composition, unless, which is occasionally, unless the rubric tells you to give us a story, general story, which can be a fairy tale, unless those are the instructions, please remember this story that you are telling is related to you as a person. You are the starring. And since you are the starring, mostly you'll be talking about I, in reference to yourself, I. So this is very important. Below is the beginning of a story. Complete it, making it as interesting as possible. Now, how do we gather stories? How can I tell an interesting story? Where do I get an interesting story from? Before we answer that question, I want us to get into the little tidbits that teachers normally speak to you about. The teachers normally talk to you about some certain basics here. Like number one, when you write your composition, they normally talk about handwriting. That is number one. They speak about handwriting, that your handwriting must be neat. In fact, I want to urge you that whenever you are writing your composition, please make sure that your handwriting, first and foremost, is your handwriting is neat, and not just neat, it should be legible, able to be read. Even your composition should be able to be read even from far. Whoever looks at it should never, the marker who is the examiner should never be straining to read through your composition. So it must be conspicuous. And the other thing about handwriting, please, your capital letters and small letters must be seen to be so. Your capital letters must conspicuously be seen to be capital, and small letters must be seen to be small letters. Certain times you find candidates becoming very careless with their handwriting. And especially when it comes to writing of S and C, you'd find somebody writing, I went to school by myself. Now, you'd notice here that these S's that I've underlined are between capital and small. In fact, from what I can see, this look is like capital letters. So I want to urge you that you should be very keen with your handwriting. Very keen with your handwriting. That is one. Number two, when you write your story, please ensure that your spellings correct. Use correct. Make sure that your spellings are correct. Those are the little bits that the examiners look at, and I want you to take this very seriously. Most of us are very poor with spelling. Most of us are very poor with sentence structures, sentence construction. These are basics. I normally urge that whenever you write your composition, use as simple language as possible. I have taught English for more than 30 years. So I want you to take this thing that I'm talking about very seriously. I've taught English for more than 30 years. I've marked several compositions. I don't know or if on average I must have marked more than 1 million papers as I speak. And there is something common that we see. There are certain things that are common that we see when we mark compositions. Any moment I mark a composition by a Kenyan, I would tell, this is a Kenyan writing. So be careful about these things that I'm talking about. Composition writing plays a very major role in the final tally of your English. Those who get 90s at KCP level, 90s, and this go up to 99%, it's only in English and Kiswahili that certain times it goes up to 99%. Over these years that I'm telling you I've taught English, I've seen a very similar trend. Those candidates that normally score 30 and above, there is just a way by which they fall into this category. So composition writing plays a very, very major role in your final tally. Now, I am going to spend a lot of time talking about this word. These two words, creativity and imagination. You know, at this juncture, we are assuming, the assumption is that every class 8 is good in sentence construction. That is the assumption, that you are all perfect with your sentence construction. We assume that you are good with your parts of speech. That is the assumption. That is the assumption that you are already good with your parts of speech. Now, in case you are not good with parts of speech, before I get into this creativity and imagination into details, let me run you through parts of speech very, very quickly, because it's important. And I'm doing this in relation to writing. I'm doing this in relation to writing. The first part of speech, of course, you know, is noun. Noun is a naming word. A naming word. Now, there are mistakes we normally observe when we mark your compositions. We have common nouns, we have proper nouns, and we have different types of nouns, but I want to be limited to common, proper, not abstract, but possessive. These two that I've marked are areas in which candidates are prone to making errors. We are prone to err in these two. A child who has learned his or her English well must always know the punctuations. Punctuation marks are very important. I'm not going to spend time speaking about punctuations, but very important. Such that when you write a sentence, I met Jane in the market. I met Jane in the market. Now, I am very cognizant, as I write this, I'm very cognizant of my punctuation. Why? This is Jane, capital J, in the market. If I were to name the market, for instance, she was sent to Naivas supermarket. Majority of you would simply write Naivas without caring about N. So I want you to look at these very important things that I'm mentioning. We were taken to Eldoret on Friday morning. On Friday. You can see Eldoret and you can see Friday. These are specific names. These are specific names, which means they are proper nouns. So anytime you have a specific name, anytime you are writing and there is a specific name that you must write, please make sure that you capitalize your letters. The initial letters must be in capital. Whether it's between a sentence, whether it begins, of course, you know as a rule, you begin your sentences with capital letters. With proper nouns, whether you begin with it or not, they must always be capitalized. How do I know my proper nouns? They are specific names. Common noun, for example, common noun. This is very important. This is very important. Common noun, river. Specific name of a river, we can be specific about a river, Tana, for example, or river Nzoia. Please, when you are specific, ensure your initial letters are in capital. Man, proper name can be John, can be Kamau. You ensure those are capital. Day, Friday, Saturday, what have you? Month can be January, February. Ensure these are initial. Car, majority simply write Toyota. I see people writing Toyota. It is wrong. Toyota is a specific name of a car, so the initial letter T must be capital. Toyota or Mercedes, Benz. I was in a V8. Now, these are very important. Specific names. If you have a dog called Tommy, you ensure capital T. Now, let me dash elsewhere. I spoke again on nouns. I mentioned possessive. Mary's pen. Now, this is where majority of our candidates fail because they simply ignore this apostrophe. It's very important. I want you to ensure that anytime you write such, you place it. And you must know where and when to place your apostrophe. Children's pens. You must know where to place it. Babies, prams. Majority simply write that. Please, since these are the plural of babies, you place the apostrophe just there. That is as far as nouns are concerned. Quickly, I want to get to pronoun. Because of time, I want to get to pronoun. Mark you, the major thing I want us to focus on is creativity. But these preliminary ones are very important. Pronoun is a word that stands in place of a noun. Mary is my friend. I visit Mary quite often. Now, once you have mentioned somebody, and I see this problem again occur in writings, you'd see a candidate tending to keep on repeating the word Mary. You must know when to replace Mary with She. I visited her. Her. I visited her quite. I visit her quite often. Now, pronouns are divided into, very quickly, I want you to have somewhere you take note of this. My board is small, so I'll keep on rubbing. We have subjective. We have objective. We have possessive. And last but not least, we have reflexive. Now look at this very quickly so that you see what I mean, especially when it comes to writing. Subjective, first person singular is I, plural we. Second person you, plural is you. Third person he or she, depending on the gender, it. Plural would be they. Now, subjective, the reason we call this subjective is because we normally begin our sentences using this. I go to school. We are good children. You are a nice boy. He is so funny. It is my dog or my pen. They are our friends. We begin sentences this way. And we complete with this objective. Come with me. Come with us. Let's go with you, singular and plural. Come with him. Let's go with her. This is, I'm taking it with me, it. He is going to school with them. Now we complete our sentences with this. I'll not get into this because I know you have plenty of time to learn this even on your own using various books. Possessive, my, mine. Our, ours. Your, yours. Same as that. His book. The book is his. This is her pen. The pen is hers. This is its mouth. This is there. Now, this is where the one that I've just pointed out, this is where we have another problem. Majority of us don't know when it should be its or its. This one simply means it is. So it's 2 o'clock. This would be, it's 2 o'clock. It's so easy to know when to use either one. As far as possessive is concerned, you don't place the apostrophe. You don't place the apostrophe. This is its milk, the cat's milk. This is its milk. You don't place the apostrophe. Those are mistakes that I want us to get rid of. Lastly, but not least, my, myself, ourselves, yourselves, singular, plural, yourselves, himself, herself, itself, then themselves. Mistakes that we see majority of Kenyan pupils making, they write this myself as myself. Myself. They write these words separately. They write those words separately. That is a big, big mistake. Don't you ever write them separately, I beg that my cameraman focus on this one very well. You can zoom on this so that it is seen well. Myself is singular. I mean, is one word, not two. One word, not two. Majority of you there write my, then self. Those are the mistakes that would always make you lose marks. And these are the things I want to urge you not to get into. Now, very quickly, that is as far as pronoun is concerned. From pronoun we have verb. And this is the most important part of speech. Let me jump it. I come to adjective, adverb, conjunction, preposition. Last but not least, there are 8 parts of speech. We have interjection. Please do your revisions based on this thoroughly. Now, as you write, a good composition writer, a good storyteller will always ensure that you use as many adjectives as possible. Adjectives are words that describe. They are descriptive words. Here I am. Anybody can describe me. I am black. Not as a charcoal. Haha. I am black. There are people who are brown. I've never seen a white person. Though we hear people are white, we have Europeans calling themselves white. Those are adjectives. When you write your composition, you can describe a person, you can describe weather. Today's weather is chilly outside there. It's chilly, terribly chilly. Sometimes it's sunny. So it's good as you write your composition, and I'll be giving you a lot of stories just to support these things that I'm talking about. Now, I'll come to that. Before that, I just want to urge that you use as many adjectives as possible. Adverbs. An adverb is a word that shows how something is done. I'm walking slowly. Most adverbs that of manner have ly. In your writing, when you write your composition, when you tell your story, please mingle all these parts of speech. You are proving to the marker, to the examiner, that you have learned your English well. So what better way to prove it other than place it in writing? So when you write your composition, my dear girl and boy, ensure that you have adverbs. So an adverb shows how something is done. Majority of how end with ly. It shows when something is done. When. An adverb also shows when. When can we meet? Tomorrow. Tomorrow is an adverb. We met yesterday. Oh, see you soon. Those are adverbs. An adverb shows where something is done. Where can we meet? Nowhere. Somewhere. If you tell me, okay, we are meeting tomorrow. Where? Nowhere. You've given me an answer that has put me off. Adverbs also explain. So adverbs are words that explain. It's a word that shows why something is done. Why? Because. since. Those are just but a few examples of adverbs that I'm talking about. Now, let me wrap those conjunctions, prepositions. We do very badly in prepositions. I've seen pupils writing, oh, the pen was on my hand. This is not on my hand, it is in my hand. Please, in this program, I'm not going to take you through prepositions. You have several books, and I want, so people wonder, is it I'm in the shade or on the shade or under a shade or under a tree? I'm in the shade. I'm sitting in the shade basking. So you must know, am I traveling on a bus or by a bus? I know some of this you already are aware of. Bus, so it is on a bus. But without the article I go by bus. I traveled by. I went on foot, not I went with foot. With means you are traveling and your feet are also traveling. So as you travel, your feet also travel. You must know your prepositions well and use them very well. I'm placing this onto the table. Now it is on the table. We dive into the swimming pool. Once you are there, you are in. The teacher is getting into the classroom. Movement. Now I am in the classroom. So I want you to do a lot of practice as regards prepositions. Interjections. A snake. Now, an interjection, I know you have gone through this in your class. You must know which right interjection to use. Those are interjections. Shh, quiet. The teacher is coming. That one is an interjection. An interjection shows an abrupt feeling, a way of expressing an abrupt feeling, and something that just happens abruptly. So we have to know when to use them. Conjunctions, and I'll take a moment in this. Because again, this is an area majority of the pupils and the candidates do very badly at. The only conjunctions they know because the only conjunctions they know, but, and then it ends there. I hate to see a composition where you keep on repeating. When the teacher got in, we stood up. When he started teaching, you become too monotonous. There are several conjunctions that I want you to get used to. Conjunctions as well as correlatives, they go together. Conjunctions as well as correlatives. There is since. We have although. We have despite. We have in spite of. We have while. We have whereas. Where. Whereas. We have unless. We have until or not until. We have several. If I were to name these conjunctions, I would feel we have the one that we normally use in conditional sentences. If. Please get to know your conjunctions and several of them, how to use them, very important, so that when it comes to writing, you find it very easy. How many of you can use although? You must know there are conjunctions of contrast. So there are several conjunctions that I'm not going to get into now. You must know how to use as soon as, dash, dash, dash. As soon as it started to rain, we ran into the classroom. As soon as. How do you use the same sentence for no sooner? No sooner had it begun to rain than we all got into our classrooms. No sooner. And you must be able to know when is it begun with you rather than began with A. You must know as a candidate. These are areas, in case you still don't know them, please, with your teachers, ensure you practice them. At this juncture, I'm not going to do that because I want us to focus entirely on creativity. Hardly or scarcely. Scarcely had it begun to rain when we all got. So you must know how to use a variety of conjunctions, my boy and my girl. A variety. Prove yourself to the examiner that you know the Queen's language. I jumped verb and purposely because besides noun, this is also this is the most important part of speech. This is the most important part of speech. It is from verbs that we form sentences. It is from verbs that we organize our sentences. You know, when you write your story or when you speak, whenever you communicate, there is a way you mingle these words. You play with these words. And what better way than playing them in tenses? This is what brings in tenses. Now, quickly, so that I get into the most important writing part, I just want to rush you through. English is so simple. English is so easy. English has been organized in just three forms of tenses. First one is, write somewhere, present tense forms. Present tense forms. Present tense forms. Present tense form, first we have simple present tense. Simple present tense. Simple present tense means it's just as simple as it is. Go, join, run, try, walk. He walks to school. He watches football. There are certain times, you must also know the rule that I don't want to spend time here using, but we are doing very poorly as a country. We are doing very poorly as far as present tense is concerned. You'll see people writing, my mother and my sister goes home. Plenty of us do that because we don't know when should we add s or es to the verb and when should we not. When should we cease? Is it go? Is it goes? Very quickly, Only when you use third person singular do you add s to the verb. You know third person singular? He goes home in the evening. We travel. Oh, we is not third person singular. It is first person plural. So I'm speaking about third person singular. It drinks milk. It drinks, not it drink milk. It drinks milk. But when there are now two, the cat and the dog drink milk. There are now two. The cat and the dog drink tea. Tea? Drink milk. The cat and the dog drink milk. Not the cat and the dog drinks milk. We do very poorly in this. Majority of us simply place the S anyhow. I'm not here for that. I just warned you. In the other, when you use the other forms, first, second person, singular, plural, and all those, you now omit the S or ES. We wake up at 5 o'clock. She listens to music. These are simple present tense. Then we have present continuous tense. Present continuous. ING. Anytime you hear continuous, there must be an ING. We are waking up. She is listening to music. Then present perfect. Present perfect tense. Work on this on your own. Has or have. Has or have. She has taken my book. Now, our focus as class 8s is in past tense forms. Past tense forms. Past tense forms. This is now what you use in writing your composition. Past tense forms. Past tense form of we wake up, we woke up. She listened to music. Present continuous past tense form of it would be past continuous, she was. She was. Now, in our writing, and even in the stories that I'll be giving you, you'll see our focus is mainly on past tense forms. Past tense forms. Let me write it down very quickly and then we get into creativity. Aha. Simple past. You'll always be writing, we began. We began with A, to play. She took a banana and ate it. We tried our best. Now, this is the form that when you write your sentence, I mean your story, you will always be using majority of the time. And even in the examples that I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you some stories here. You'll see us using this mainly with a mixture of past continuous, we were playing, we were sitting, with a mixture of past perfect, especially most of us don't know when to use it, when to apply it. You must, as a candidate, know when to apply it, especially when it involves flashbacks. As you write your composition, flashbacks will also play a role here, and I'm going to begin reading you one maybe now. Now, I want you to focus on your tenses. Practice your tenses very well. I don't have time for that right now. So right now, I want us to get into composition writing, creativity. Hello, are you there? I want us to focus now on creativity. As I said before, the instruction has always been the same. Even this year, don't expect it to be any different. Let me predict for you that this year, it will also be started composition. It won't be ended so that you begin. It will be started composition. And the instruction you'll see this year is the same. Below is the beginning of a story. Complete it, making it as interesting as possible. Now, if your story is not interesting, whether you have applied your grammar so nicely and punctuated your sentences so well, if the story is not interesting, then you have failed the test. Because the test here says, make it as interesting as possible. How do we make stories as interesting as possible? I would want us to get 1 or 2 rubrics. For instance, let me write one here. We woke up. In an upbeat mood. The birds flew. No, we Kenyans read it flew. The birds flew back and forth as they tweeted with excitement. Now, there is something I want to mention as I go on. When you write your composition and in your paper, this doesn't fit. I normally see some of you writing with excite, then you write meant here. Now, that no longer applies in current writing. So we don't do that. If it doesn't fit, please just leave that space on its own, leave that space, then write the whole excitement here with excitement from tree to tree. Assume that this is this year's rubric. Suddenly, I heard dash dash dash. Connecting a rubric is very important. Joining a rubric with your story, finding the next sentence is very important. If you pick a wrong sentence, developing your story will be very hard, very difficult. And mark you are told you must fill at least a page and a half. That's as a rule. As a rule in Kenya, you must complete at least a page and a half. If it is less than that, you won't get above 25, no matter how nicely you have written. So please make sure your writing is at least 1.5 pages, but again, make it 1.75 or as much as you can. When you have a story with you, it always flows. It always flows. Your writing will keep on flow. So the sentence that joins this must be one that would make it easy for you to continue, to keep up with this story. You must understand your rubric. You must understand. We woke up in an upbeat mood. The birds flew back and forth as they twittered with excitement from tree to tree. Look at that. Look at that. you must understand the meaning of the rubric. What is the meaning of upbeat? There is the goodness with KCP, they'll never give you words whose meanings you don't know. In this case, maybe you don't know the meaning of upbeat, but from the way it is used, upbeat is in excitement, in a joyful way. You are excited, you are exuberant. Have you ever woken up in a good mood? You know, we wake up in different moods. Some of us, I hear some of us have what we call mood swings. There are certain times you wake up and you don't want to get out of that bed. You are in very bad mood. Has your mother or your dad ever been in bad mood? That is not what we are talking about in this rubric. It's about us getting into an upbeat mood, a good mood. Now, anything can start well. You know, when it comes to telling a story, things can begin well and things can end wrongly. It can start well and yet end wrongly. So your story is not limited to this upbeat mood. It can begin well. You can wake up in a good mood and then somebody just spoils your day. So when you write your composition, I want you to be creative. I want you to be imagining. It's about creating pictures in our mind, because when we wake up, we go through different emotions. When I woke up this morning and came to this class here, there are several things that I saw along the way. So in telling stories, please give us stories that captivates, a story that captures the attention, a story that captivates, a story that captures attention. It captures attention of somebody immediately. You know, markers have so many compositions to mark, and in most cases what they do, they simply look at the beginning and the end. But there are few instances when a child has written something out of this world. It causes the marker to go through that composition and read through it, and there is nothing so nice as having the marker, the examiner, go through the whole of your composition. It has to be something that... Now, in Kenya we have a problem, a big problem. Majority of the candidates always write about one or two things. Number one, they'll write about being kidnapped. And then you think being kidnapped gives you a lot of marks. Don't write about being kidnapped. Many write about it. It has even lost flavor. There are those who write about accidents. There are those who write about getting lost in a forest. These are not directions that I want to urge you to follow. We have so many directions that we can take, and I want to read you a story written by me, and I'll read you also a few that have been written by pupils like you. Now, we woke up in an upbeat mood. The birds flew back and forth as they twittered with excitement from tree to tree. Suddenly I heard, never ever overthink how to complete your rubric. Problem again that we have in our country, we always write in a certain style, a certain way. I went into the frogs kingdom. There is not, let me tell you, there is no such thing as frog's kingdom. That is a Luo phrase that someone forced into English. That you'll never find a frog's kingdom anywhere. But there is a trend by which that Kenyan writers like following. You know, you are around 1.5 candidates. I want to assume this year they must have reached 1.5 candidates. Out of this, more than half, almost 3/4, will write a certain way. I went into the bathroom, took a blood-curdling shower. That is the trend that we normally like to follow. Looked at myself in the mirror, and wow, I was looking, speak and span. Everybody writes that. Everybody. Before I could say Jack Robinson, we have certain phrases that are not even English phrases. Before I could say Jack Robinson, not because nowadays. So there are phrases that you ought to avoid. I want you to be simple. Use simple English first and foremost. We are interested in the story. A story that is told, which is interesting, will always earn you marks, no matter how simple the language is. Of course, we have stylistic devices. Those ones I call the icing on the cake. There are a lot, suddenly I heard, there are a lot of things you can hear. It's possible suddenly I heard my mother, call me. Don't overthink. We don't expect you to think too deeply. You are only a child. So when you write as a child, not as an adult. Write as a child. So let me read my composition very quickly so that you see how mine flowed. Suddenly I heard our doorbell ring. Ring. It was too early for any person to pay us a visit. Short sentences. Mother, who by now was already washing clothes in the bathroom, asked my younger sister and me to open the door. Shh, I whispered to Liz, let's not open. Go back to bed and snore. I'll do the same. Now, your mother asking you to open the door, and you are telling your sister that you shouldn't open? You know, that is a story that would make somebody curious to know what is going on here. Shh. I whispered to Liz, let's not open. Go back to bed and snore. I'll do the same. That was being naughty, but it was necessary. I was sure I knew the person knocking. It had to be her, and I hated her. So I have a preconceived idea about who is knocking. I hated her. She must have calculated that it was our time to have breakfast. She was our neighbor, June. Any moment June decided to knock on our door, it had to be during mealtime to impose herself on our delicacies. Have you ever been in such a situation and your mom has cooked something so nice? You know, when you write a story, write based on realities of life, these things that we experience daily. I know there are times you must have thought that food is too little for you to share with other people. And this is the case. This is why I don't want us to open, because I'm sure June has come to eat. The last time she did that was during lunchtime. I remember the day quite vividly, with no nostalgia at all. It was late in June, like her name. We were on half term. Guess what mother had prepared for us that day? Chicken stew with ugali, rice, and chapati. I didn't know the intruder had sniffed into the air and was lurking around. Sweet aroma of our delicacies dangerously occupied the air. I did not want it to invite any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Let me pause for a while. English expressions are English expressions. I normally see people trying to substitute certain words with their own imaginations. They think that is now being imaginative. Like somebody would write, I did not want to invite every Jerry, Nyokavi, and Waru. Please, English is English. That is an expression on itself. You cannot substitute these names with other names. I did not want you to invite any Tom, Dick, or Harry, yet it indeed attracted one non-bad customer. We had placed the meal on the table. Everybody had washed their hands. With a smile on my face, I asked us to close our eyes so that I would pray. Just as I was on the verge of blessing it, with my hands clasped close to my face, so well behaved, I heard that dreadful voice of June. I almost jumped up. Feelings. It's important that you express feelings, how you feel, and you put it down in black and white. I almost jumped up in protest. The voice was unmistakable. Is anyone home? She asked, as if she had no idea. I felt something shock me, irritating me. To make matters worse, she was not alone. In her company was a whole lot of my mother's churchmates, 4 huge men with big bellies. Oh my God! And I've written that. Oh my God! I quickly glanced at the delicacies spread all across the table. How too little it was for us to share with anybody. I could have thrown everything into my mouth and swallowed them whole. I felt like jumping up and chasing every one of them out. Feelings! But there was nothing else I could do. I was powerless to do anything. My mother rose to her feet, not to send them away, but to welcome them. She was beaming with joy, a broad, scintillating smile all over her face. What a nice time to visit, she said, openly elated. Come in, Pastor, and all of you. June, this is so nice of you to have brought us guests. That I loved my pastor was in no doubt, but not now. I loved my pastors when he would preach for us, but not now when he came to intrude on our lunch. That I loved my pastor was in no doubt, but not now. As my parents warmly greeted them, I nearly hid my hands behind me, not wanting to shake theirs. My heart grumbled. My face openly showed contempt and disdain. Everything else was now between me and God. God, please talk to these people. Let them say they are satisfied. That was my prayer. That was the instant moment I had Mother asking them to wash their hands and join us. My face was miserable. I watched them closely, hoping they said they were satisfied. My eyes were fixed on the first elder, seated close to the pastor. If he said no, I was sure all the rest would do the same. He stared at me as if to seek my permission. I squinted at him with a face pleading for him to say no. My prayers never went past the roof. The elder accepted my mother's prompting. I'll just take a little taste, he said, as if that would make me feel better. I wouldn't want you to feel bad by refusing my food, my sister. The others also pulled their seats. I felt tears gather in my eyes. I was hungrier. I almost stormed out in protest. A little taste turned out to be real swallowing. One chapati after the other disappeared as I watched. Now look at the sentences are simple, but the story in itself captures attention. All the fat pieces of chicken disappeared into their stomachs. Not much was left for supper. Although I was able to eat to my fill, now you see I've used I've used another conjunction to begin the sentence. Although I was able to eat to my fill, I developed a strong hatred for June. And so when I heard the doorbell ring for the second time, and my sister standing up to go and open, I pulled her back to bed. She was the type that could scream she was the type that could scream. To prevent that, I ensured I blocked her mouth. Imagine that. Mother had to go and open the door by herself. As we pretended to be deep asleep, she welcomed her guest enthusiastically. Within a few minutes, I heard her call me, "Susan, come and greet our visitor." Would you? Would you go and visit and greet June? You can guess how I felt. I burnt with anger and wasted no time. Instead of going to meet June, I rudely answered Mother, "Leave me alone, Mom, I'm sleeping." Some of you answer your parents that way rudely. I know. Some of you normally find themselves answering their parents rudely. Mother left me alone. I could hear her steps towards the kitchen. Within minutes, it appeared she had prepared tea and taken it to her guests. By now, hunger pangs were biting me. I was not afraid of June, so I moved out of our bedroom and into the kitchen unnoticed. I went into the kitchen and noticed there was no tea in the kitchen. "Where's my tea, Mom?" I shouted rather rudely. "Hello, Sue," a voice called me. And it was not June. A voice called me and it was not June. I hope against all hopes that it was her. I felt dazed. Feelings, if not dizzy. My heart made a somersault. It almost stopped beating. I could have collapsed in utter shock. The voice was unmistakably familiar. What had I done? "Come and greet me. I've decided to pay you a surprise visit." I looked at the door, the kitchen door, and felt like moving slowly outside, but I couldn't. I had to shamefully go and face her. Shame was written all over my face. I stood before her. I went and felt so embarrassed as I went to greet my class teacher. So after all this while, this was not June. It was my class teacher who had paid us a surprise visit. What a story. And I'm leaving that story at that. That means suspense. We have left that story in suspense so that you, the reader, work out the rest. How did it end up? Storytelling is about facing up to speaking about these things that we do every day. You as a child, the environments that you normally face daily is at school. Sometimes you go on a trip. What do you normally do during trips? Sometimes you go to church. Sometimes you attend weddings. There are a lot of things that we do in our lives as children. So when you write your composition, write as a child, but focus on these things that you normally do. Sometimes you are cheeky. Certain times a person do very bad things to you. Certain times somebody does something very good to you. These are the things that we want you to write about. Has someone ever hurt you in life? Has someone ever said something so hurtful you've never forgotten? Has someone ever done that to you? So, when you write your composition, we are talking about realities of life. In realities of life, you don't see giants. So please don't try to us that you saw a giant with 3 eyes, one at the center, unless it is a dream. Of course, in a dream, you can dream about anything. Here is a composition that caught my eyes, written by by a child, written by a child who developed the same. I want to read it very quickly so that you see how creative children are. And I want you to notice the simple sentences that this child is using. We woke up in an upbeat mood. The birds flew back and forth as they twittered with excitement from tree to tree. Suddenly I heard the bell ring. He has connected it very well. I heard the bell ring. Our senior teacher, school environment, always told us to be settled in our classes as soon as the bell rang. Our school was taking us for a trip to Nakuru. Our happiness knew no bounds. Short, beautiful sentences by a child. This child from Jabali. My friends and I quickly dressed in our uniform and silently made our way into the classroom. We could hear murmurs and giggles. Surprisingly, Mr. Tom, our class teacher, was in class. He was staring at his phone like an artifact he was trying to understand. Without wasting time, we went into the dining hall to have breakfast. I wolfed down the lip-smacking breakfast. Our suitcases were heavy, but we scurried with them all the way into the bus. The prefect humbly prayed for our journey, then we set off at a breaknecking speed. Mr. Tom was, as usual, checking his never-ending messages. See that creativity. We were to stay at the Nakuru King's Hotel, and we could not wait. Some boys in our class persuaded me to sing the World Cup theme song. I gave in to their nagging. Now, you'll see me being hesitant as I read, because though he had a good story, the writing were not very easy to see. And I urge you that when you write, please let them be legible enough. And began singing cheerfully. The whole bus burst out into laughter, including our driver, who nearly hit someone but swerved in time. Truly, a stitch in time saves 9. Suddenly, raindrops began falling. And sooner than later, it was a heavy storm. We reached a certain point of the road, then we could not proceed. Mr. Tom began rebuking the government because of that particular road. We all giggled in joy. Just see those creativity. At least we had one more thing to cheer us up. We had to find another solution. I decided to board an empty bus. Although it looked like it would fall apart any second, we boarded it. A couple of minutes from our departure, other passengers began alighting. The teacher tried his best to tell the driver to stop, but to no avail. He was busy singing his mother tongue songs that were really annoying. We pondered over our well-being. Without any notice, we headed straight to a tree. I closed my eyes tight to avoid seeing the impact. When I opened my eyes, I saw my science teacher staring at me. Oh no, I had slept during the lesson. I had slept during the lesson. That is pure genius. That is beautiful writing by a child. I want you to be using short sentences when you write your composition. Just ensure that the story is beautiful. Now, I want to read one more story, and now in this case, the rubric is now different. It's a different rubric. We were on holidays. I was very excited when my uncle invited me to go and stay with them. It was such a lovely family. So the rubric beginning was, we were on holiday. I was very excited when my uncle invited me to go and stay with them. It was such a lovely family. I had only been seeing them when they came to visit us in the urban area. That night, I prepared myself. I made sure that I had packed all that I needed. I barely got any sleep as I was thinking about the following day. I then fell asleep. Those are realities of life. I was woken up by the chirping of birds. They were flying from tree to tree. As soon as I realized it was morning, I sprang out of bed feeling as fresh as a daisy. The bright rays of the sun penetrated my room. I took a cool shower to at least refresh myself and change into my best clothes. Written by a child. Look at the flow of the sentences. Look at how simple it is. Using short sentences. Short sentences. I went to the kitchen and ate a mouth-watering breakfast that left me begging for more. I had no other choice but to leave as soon as possible to catch the first bus. Within minutes, I was already at the bus stop. It was just a stone throw away. I went into one bus, and the journey began. I was really afraid. I had never traveled on my own. The journey was boring and tiresome. The good thing about it is I had carried a sold-out story book called A Close Call, written by, he forgot to write the name of the persons, so I don't know. But that is normal. Certain times when we write, we are bound to make some certain mistakes. And this is why we ask that when you write your composition, always spare around 5 minutes to go through your composition so that you rectify what should be rectified. Back to the story. By the time I was halfway through chapter 3, I had fallen into a deep slumber. No sooner had I woken up than I felt someone shake me vigorously. I looked up and saw the conductor looking at me with blazing eyes. I was dumbfounded. All the other passengers laughed at me in one unison. Have I been left? I asked myself in awe. I had actually just arrived at my destination. I ran out feeling embarrassed as my cheeks got hotter and hotter. It took me only 3 footsteps. I tapped on the door thrice, expecting to get an answer after a few minutes. To my surprise, my aunt opened the door. She wore a wide banana smile on her face. She welcomed me in. I could see the house trying to be cleaned up quickly by the children. I expected to be served delicious food that resembled what I was used to. I got the complete opposite. I was served the so-called matoke that was full of water. The beans had weevils in them. I looked at the food in disgust, wishing for the earth to open up and swallow me alive. I decided to take a stroll since I was bored. I went around the compound. I saw the farm animals they kept. Some animals like mother pig, rabbit, and what have you, which I only saw on television. I then realized that there were a lot of differences between urban and rural areas. At night, I went back to the house and ate dinner. I was escorted to our room where I slept at the top of a double-decker. Oh my God, what should I do? I had no other option since I was afraid. I did not have enough courage. I slept, and in the morning, my aunt found the mattress all wet with my stinking urine. Thankfully, my cousins hadn't seen it since they had gone out to play. My aunt helped me clean up. She had gave me a piece of advice. The day for leaving, I prepared myself, and it did not end it so well, but that story in itself, written by a child, is enough to give you 36. And this has been written by a child called Karaoke Joy Wanjiru, Acacia Green in Udhiro. So this means even you can have a story. The stories must be related to what you go through daily in life. A good storyteller must be a good reader as well. Read a lot of storybooks. Talk about your experience beside reading storybooks. Another way by which you can get stories is from daily occurrences. The news trending news that you hear. Sometimes trending news can help us to build very good stories. Candidates, to earn yourself, the easiest subject to pass at KCPE level is English. And the best way to pass in English, besides the grammar parts, whereby you should get between 35 and above, 40, 45, you get them good, composition writing plays a major role in your final tally. I cannot say this enough. As you are preparing yourself in English, be in the habit of writing compositions. Be in the habit of giving them to your teachers to mark, and be in the habit of rectifying mistakes. Certain times the teachers give us or rectify our mistakes, but we don't go through them. Spellings, look at them critically, and sentence structures. I can speak the whole day long. I can give several stories. But as far as today, let us end it just there. I hope you've got at least something that will help you arm yourself to the teeth and prepare yourself for the forthcoming examination. I wish you the best. God bless you.